A bomber designed for 3,000 meters was never meant to skim waves at 10. Yet in a humid hangar at Dobodura, mechanics quietly remove the glass nose and replace it with 8 forward-firing guns. 5:48 in the morning. Dobodura Airfield, New Guinea. Early 1943. The air is already thick with moisture. It settles on skin and fabric and metal, turning everything slightly heavy, slightly slower. The jungle beyond the strip breathes out a damp green heat that never really fades, even before sunrise. Rows of B-25 Mitchell bombers sit unevenly along the pierced steel planking. Their olive paint is dull under a low gray sky. Beads of condensation collect along the glass noses and drip quietly onto the ground. Mechanics move with unhurried precision. No wasted motion. One man tightens a panel beneath an engine cowling, then wipes his hands on a rag already dark with oil. Another checks the hinges on a bomb bay door, lifting it slightly, letting it fall, listening to the sound it makes. A crew chief stands with a clipboard, pencil tucked behind his ear, counting ammunition belts as if inventory could solve what the sky refuses to. No one talks about fear. They talk about fuel loads, about engine temperatures, about whether the runway will hold if the rain returns. But everyone is counting something else. Counting who did not come back. Inside the operations tent, yesterday's chalk marks have not yet been erased. Large transports sunk. 0. B-25 aircraft lost in 6 weeks. More than 30. Average time over target, 11 minutes. 11 minutes. That is how long a crew can expect to remain above a Japanese convoy before the sky closes in with flak and gunfire. The number hangs there without decoration. No one circles it. No one underlines it. It does not need emphasis. The crisis is not dramatic. It is repetitive. An hour later, the engines begin to turn over one by one. The sound builds gradually, like a storm that has decided to arrive early. The bombers lift into the humid morning air and climb toward 3,000 meters. It is the approved altitude, the safe altitude, the doctrinal altitude. From there, the Vitiaz Strait looks almost calm, dark water stretching between New Guinea and New Britain. Somewhere below, a convoy moves north. 8 ships, transports loaded with supplies, escorts spaced carefully among them. Inside the lead Mitchell, the bombardier adjusts the sight and speaks in a measured tone. Steady, hold it steady. At 3,000 meters, the approach feels controlled, almost clinical. The aircraft levels out. The bomb run begins. Bomb bay doors open. That sound is subtle inside the aircraft. A shift in airflow, a slight vibration. Below, it is a signal. On the lead transport, lookouts glance upward. The helmsman begins a gradual turn, not sharp, not desperate, just enough. The bomb releases. At that altitude, gravity is patient. The bomb does not fall instantly. It descends through heavy tropical air for long seconds, long enough for the ship below to continue its slow zigzag. The physics are simple. The bomb falls longer than it takes the ship to change course. By the time the bomb reaches the ocean, the water it was aimed at is empty. A white column rises from the sea, tall and violent. The transport remains intact. Miss. The convoy does not scatter. It does not panic. It continues moving forward, adjusting rhythmically. Then the anti-aircraft guns begin. They do not wait for impact. They begin firing seconds after the bomb bay doors open. The gunners have learned the sequence. Doors open. Aircraft committed. Fire. Black bursts bloom at altitude. Tracer rounds climb steadily. The bomber banks away, engines straining. In the cockpit, no one shouts. In the pilot's mind, the numbers repeat. Large transports sunk. 0. Aircraft lost in 6 weeks. More than 30. Average time over target, 11 minutes. The pattern holds. Every mission follows the same steps. Climb, approach, doors open, ships turn. Bomb falls. Miss. Flak rises. Return, if possible. The problem is not effort. The problem is structure. That afternoon at 5th Air Force headquarters, the rain taps softly against the tin roof. Maps of the northern coast of New Guinea cover a long wooden table. Pencil marks crisscross the Vitiaz Strait, marking convoy sightings and attack vectors. Major General George Kenney stands quietly with a stack of mission reports in his hands. He does not raise his voice. He does not question the courage of his crews. He reads, altitude, 3,000 meters, bomb release interval, standard, enemy maneuver, zigzag initiated immediately after bomb bay doors opened. Result, near miss. He turns the page. Similar numbers, similar outcome. He picks up a pencil and writes on a blank margin. Time from release to impact. Extended. Time required for ship to alter heading. Brief. He pauses, staring at the words. Another officer waits for instruction, but none comes. Kenney walks to the map and traces a finger along a penciled route across the strait. At 3,000 meters, he says calmly, "How long does the bomb fall?" "Long enough, sir," someone answers carefully. "Long enough for what?" "For the ship to move." He nods once. "And when do the gunners begin firing?" "Within seconds of the doors opening." Kenney looks back down at the reports. The opening of the bomb bay doors is not just a mechanical action. It is a warning. It announces the attack before the weapon arrives. The system repeats because it was designed to. High altitude for safety, level approach for accuracy, bomb release by calculation. But the enemy has adjusted to the rhythm. Kenney does not slam his hand on the table. He does not speak in slogans. He simply observes the pattern forming across the pages. Every mission gives the convoy the same advantage. Every bomb gives them time. He sets the reports down carefully. Outside, another line of B-25s sits cooling in the fading light, condensation forming once again along their glass noses. Kenney looks toward the open doorway, toward the distant aircraft. Then he says, almost to himself, "We are giving them time." Late afternoon, 5th Air Force Headquarters, New Guinea, early 1943. Rain moves steadily across the canvas roof, not loud, not violent, just persistent. The sound is constant enough to feel like a metronome. Inside the operations hut, the air smells of damp paper and cigarette smoke. Maps of the Vitiaz Strait cover the main table. Pencil lines mark convoy routes. Circles show sighting reports. Small X marks show attack runs that changed nothing. Major General George Kenney stands with a sharpened pencil in his hand. Around him, a few senior officers wait in silence. No speeches, no anger, just fatigue and the weight of repetition. Kenney writes 3 numbers on a blank section of the map. 20 seconds, 8 seconds, 4 seconds. He taps the first number. 20 seconds, he says calmly. That is how long our bomb falls from 3,000 meters. He taps the second. 8 seconds. That is how long it takes a transport to begin a meaningful turn once we open the bomb bay doors. He taps the third. 4 seconds. That is how quickly their anti-aircraft gunners begin firing. No one argues with the numbers. They have seen them too many times. Kenney steps back slightly. So every time we attack, he continues, we give them 20 seconds to move. We give them 8 seconds to shift position. And we give their gunners 4 seconds to prepare. The rain continues overhead. The pattern is simple. Bomb bay doors open. The ships react. The bomb falls through open air while the convoy adjusts course. By the time the explosion lifts water into the sky, the target has already moved. We are not missing because our crews lack skill, Kenney says. We are missing because we are giving the ships time. He lets the word sit in the room. Time. One of the operations officers folds his arms. "What is the objective, sir?" he asks quietly. Kenney looks down at the map again, at the narrow stretch of water between New Guinea and New Britain. "The objective," he says, "is to deny them those seconds." Silence follows. It is not confusion. It is calculation. "How?" someone finally asks. Kenney does not hesitate. "We reduce the altitude." The words change the air in the room. "How low?" an officer asks. "Low enough that the bomb does not fall for 20 seconds. Kenney replies. A long pause. 50 meters, another voice suggests carefully. Kenney nods once. At 50 meters above the ocean, a B-25 would not be attacking from above. It would be flying at mast height, nearly level with the ships. The reaction comes quickly. At 50 meters, they will shoot us apart. One officer says, "Every rifle, every machine gun. We would be inside their envelope." Another shakes his head. The B-25 is not a ground attack aircraft. It was designed for medium-altitude bombing. There is no hostility in their tone, only realism. At that height, someone adds, a mistake of 2 or 3 meters means striking the water. Kenney listens. He does not dismiss the risk. He imagines it clearly. Twin engines roaring just above the waves, spray rising from prop wash, deck gunners firing directly forward instead of upward. He also imagines something else. No long descent, no warning interval, no 20 seconds. At 50 meters, he says slowly, release and impact become nearly the same moment. The officers exchange glances. That kind of approach is close to suicide. One of them says. Kenney turns toward the open doorway of the hut. In the distance, a line of B-25s sits on the soaked airfield, their glass noses reflecting gray light. "We are already losing aircraft," he says quietly. "More than 30 in 6 weeks. No one challenges that." He steps outside into the damp air. The rain has slowed to a mist. Boots sink slightly into soft ground as the officers follow. Kenney stops in front of a Mitchell and studies the transparent bombardier nose. The curved glass was built for precision sighting from altitude, for careful calculations and steady approaches. He places a hand lightly against the glazing. At 50 meters, an officer says behind him, "That nose is a liability." Kenney does not look away from the aircraft. "Then we change it," he says. The officers fall silent. He finally turns to face them. If the B-25 cannot fight at that height as it is, he continues evenly, then we make it capable. He looks back at the glass nose, thoughtful. Then we make it a different airplane. If you enjoy deep dives into real World War II innovation, consider subscribing and leaving a like so you do not miss the next chapter. Night at Dobodura Airfield, New Guinea, early 1943. The hangar is warm and humid, lit by a row of simple overhead bulbs. Tools are laid out in careful order. The atmosphere is focused rather than tense. No speeches, no urgency, just work. A B-25. Mitchell stands at the center of the hangar floor. Its glass bombardier nose reflects the light one last time before the mechanics begin removing it. Bolts are loosened. Panels are detached. The transparent section is lowered slowly and set aside on a padded crate. Without it, the aircraft looks unfinished, almost unfamiliar. Then the modifications begin. Reinforced metal plating replaces the glass. Mounting brackets are installed with measured precision. One by one, 8 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns are fitted into the new solid nose section. 8 guns aligned straight ahead, not for altitude bombing, for direct attack. Additional side-mounted guns are installed along the fuselage to provide wider coverage. Ammunition boxes are carried in and secured carefully inside the forward section. More than 6,000 rounds are loaded into the aircraft. The added weight changes the balance. An engineer makes notes on a clipboard. Removing the glass nose reduces weight. Adding guns and ammunition increases it again. The center of gravity shifts forward. Adjustments are made in fuel distribution and internal placement to compensate. Nothing is rushed. Each change is checked twice. During a short ground firing test, the engines are brought to a steady power setting. The aircraft is secured firmly with chocks. A short burst is fired. All 8 guns speak at once. The vibration is noticeable, but controlled. The nose shudders. A few panels rattle. Mechanics observe carefully, looking for structural flex or mounting stress. Notes are made. Additional reinforcement will be added around the gun mounts. Across the field, a small chalkboard in the operations tent keeps track of progress. Modified aircraft. 3, then 7, then 12. Doze until the next large convoy is expected through the Vitiaz Strait. 14, then 9. The pace is steady. Pilots are brought in to see the changes. Captain Hall walks around one of the modified Mitchells. He studies the new solid nose, now blunt and metallic instead of transparent. "It feels different," he says. "It is different," a crew chief replies. "The concept is clear. Approach at very low altitude, approximately 50 meters above the water. Use the 8 forward-firing machine guns first to suppress anti-aircraft positions on deck. Keep defensive gunners occupied. Reduce their response window. Then release bombs from minimal height, reducing fall time and limiting the enemy's ability to maneuver." It is a shift in role. The B-25 is no longer relying only on altitude and calculation. It is adapting. A few officers express concern, though without drama. At 50 meters, we are inside their effective range, one notes. Yes, another agrees, but we also shorten their reaction time. There is no shouting, only measured discussion. 2 days later, the first low-altitude evaluation flight takes place over open water at dawn. The modified Mitchell climbs, levels off, and begins a gradual descent. 100 meters, 75, 50. At that height, the ocean surface appears closer and faster than expected. The pilot maintains steady hands on the controls. Small adjustments keep the aircraft level. A brief pocket of unsettled air causes a minor dip. The altimeter needle shifts slightly. "Correcting," the pilot says calmly. Power is adjusted. The aircraft stabilizes again at roughly 50 meters. The flight continues without further incident. Back at the airfield, the report is simple. The aircraft can hold that altitude. It will require discipline. It will require precision. But it can be done. The Mitchell that once approached from 3,000 meters is becoming something else entirely. Not a replacement, an evolution. And the next convoy is already moving south. Early morning, off the northern coast of New Guinea, early 1943. The ocean is relatively calm. Long gray swells moving under a pale sky. A modified B-25 drops lower, descending steadily toward the surface. 100 meters, 50, 20. The pilot eases the aircraft down to between 5 and 15 meters above the water. At that height, the sea no longer looks distant. It moves quickly beneath the nose, textured and unpredictable. Airspeed holds at approximately 350 kilometers per hour. 5 meters lower, the co-pilot says quietly. "Negative. Holding here." The pilot replies. The aircraft skims forward, propellers cutting humid air, spray trails faintly behind. The margin for error is narrow, but manageable with steady hands. At this altitude, instructors estimate that a bomber would remain in the most intense defensive fire zone for roughly 7 seconds during an attack run. 7 seconds of exposure before passing beyond the heaviest concentration of guns. The crews repeat the profile again and again. Approach low, maintain speed, short gun burst, release, pull up gradually. The technique they are refining is called skip bombing. Instead of dropping a bomb from altitude and waiting for gravity to decide the outcome, the bomber releases it at very low height and high speed. The bomb strikes the surface of the water at a shallow angle, skips forward like a flat stone, and continues into the side of a ship before detonating. Done correctly, it reduces fall time and limits the enemy's ability to maneuver. Release point is everything. An instructor reminds them over the radio. Too high and it dives, too low and it sinks. During one practice run against a marked floating target, a crew misjudges the height. The aircraft approaches at speed, slightly lower than planned. Up a little, the co-pilot says. There is a small delay. A sudden gust pushes the left wingtip closer to the water. The pilot corrects, but the correction comes late and aggressive. The aircraft clips the surface. It does not explode dramatically. It simply strikes hard, loses stability, and disappears into spray and debris. The training pattern breaks immediately. 2 other aircraft circle carefully at higher altitude. Back at the airstrip, the loss is recorded without ceremony. Training accident. 1 aircraft, 1 crew. No one speaks about it during the afternoon briefing, but the lesson is absorbed. Precision is not optional at 5 to 15 meters. By the end of the week, 12 modified B-25s are considered ready for operational use. On a board inside the operations tent, 2 numbers are written in chalk. Ready strike aircraft, 12. Expected transports in next convoy, 8. The math is simple. Each aircraft will likely have 1 primary pass. Inside the tent, pilots review attack diagrams. Guns first, Captain Hall says, pointing at a sketch of a transport deck. Keep their heads down, then release at mast height. Another pilot adds, count 1 second and pull up gradually. Hall finishes. There is no bravado in the room. Only repetition. Outside, engines are run briefly to test synchronization of the forward-firing guns. Short bursts echo across the field, controlled and deliberate. Late that afternoon, a jeep pulls up near headquarters. An intelligence officer steps out carrying a folded message sheet. He enters the tent without raising his voice. Recon aircraft reports contact, he says. Everyone looks up. Japanese convoy confirmed at sea. Estimated 8 transports with escort. Course south through the Vitiaz Strait. The room grows quieter, not tense, just focused. Hall folds the map carefully. When? He asks. Within 48 hours, the officer replies. 12 aircraft ready. 8 transports expected. This time, the approach will be different. Early morning, March 1943. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea. The horizon is pale and steady. Low sunlight spreads across calm water, turning the sea into muted silver. In the distance, 8 Japanese transports move in organized formation, escorted and disciplined, their wakes long and straight behind them. From high altitude, they would look protected by space and time. But the attack does not come from high altitude. 12 modified B-25 aircraft approach at 10 to 15 meters above the water. At that height, they are part of the horizon. Engines steady, speed holding near 350 kilometers per hour. Inside the lead aircraft, Captain Hall watches the nearest transport grow from silhouette to structure. Hold 10 meters, he says. 10 meters, the co-pilot confirms. The convoy finally recognizes movement at sea level. Lookouts point. Deck crews react late. The first section of 4 Mitchells accelerates slightly and opens fire. 12 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns from each aircraft speak in overlapping streams. The sound rolls across the water in sustained bursts. Tracer lines cut directly into bridge structures and gun platforms. On the lead transport, anti-aircraft gunners duck instinctively. Some abandon exposed mounts. Others attempt to return fire, but are forced down again as rounds strike around them. Seconds are gained. Hall lines up on the first ship. Release. The bomb leaves at mast height. It strikes the water once, skips forward cleanly, and drives into the hull near the bow. A sharp internal explosion pushes smoke outward. The ship slows within seconds. 1 out of 8. 30 seconds later, the second aircraft in the formation targets the next transport in line. The guns suppress the forward deck, while the bomb releases slightly closer to the stern. 1 skip. 2. Impact. Flame and dark smoke rise almost immediately. 2 out of 8. The third bomber comes through less than a minute after the first strike. The convoy attempts to break formation now, but spacing is tight and reaction time is gone. The third bomb hits lower along the waterline. The explosion is heavier this time. The ship begins to list within moments. 3 out of 8. The fourth Mitchell releases early. The bomb skips wide and detonates just off the hull, damaging but not sinking the transport. Adjust spacing, a voice says over the radio. The second wave closes in. Approximately 2 minutes after the first explosion, another bomber lines up on the damaged ship. Guns fire first, sweeping the deck. Release. The bomb skips once and strikes mid-hull. The vessel slows rapidly and begins taking on water. 4 out of 8. Now the escorts are firing more effectively. Low bursts cross the path of the attackers. 1 Mitchell takes hits along the right wing. The aircraft remains steady, but loses a small amount of fuel pressure. Pressure holding, the engineer reports calmly. The formation continues. The 6th attack run begins roughly 3 minutes after the first impact. This time the target is one of the larger transports at the rear of the column. The bomber approaches, slightly offset, correcting for wind. Release. The bomb strikes the water flat, skips forward, and slams into the ship just beneath the superstructure. A deep explosion follows, heavier than the previous ones. Smoke climbs quickly. 5 out of 8. Another 30 seconds pass. A 7th. Mitchell moves in. Anti-aircraft fire is more scattered now. Several deck positions appear abandoned. The bomb is released almost directly in line with the bow. 1 skip. Immediate impact. The hull fractures visibly along the side plating. 6 out of 8. The damaged Mitchell from earlier makes its own run despite reduced power. The pilot keeps altitude steady at approximately 12 meters. Make it count, the co-pilot says quietly. Guns fire in short controlled bursts. Release. The bomb strikes the water slightly off angle, but still ricochets into the transport's midsection. The explosion is contained but decisive. The ship slows and begins to settle lower in the water. 7 out of 8. Nearly 5 minutes have passed since the first strike. Only 1 transport remains intact and attempting to flee south with an escort. The final Mitchell lines up carefully. The pilot holds steady at 10 meters, resisting the urge to climb. Anti-aircraft fire is sporadic now. Release. The bomb skips once, twice, then drives into the hull near the stern. A final explosion rolls outward across the sea. 8 out of 8. Smoke columns rise in uneven spacing across the Bismarck Sea. Some ships burn, others list sharply. Several are already losing forward motion. The damaged Mitchell that absorbed earlier hits struggles to gain altitude as the formation turns back toward New Guinea. Engine temperature is elevated but stable. Keep it smooth. the pilot says. The aircraft clears the immediate fire zone and climbs gradually. Behind them, the convoy is no longer a formation. It is scattered wreckage and smoke drifting upward into morning light. The 12 B-25s regroup loosely and head west toward Dobodura. There are no cheers over the radio, only confirmations. All aircraft check in. One by one, each responds. The damaged bomber trails slightly but remains airborne. As the coastline appears ahead, the airfield looks unchanged, humid, quiet, routine. They land in sequence. Engines shut down. Mechanics move forward to inspect bullet holes and fuel lines. Out beyond the horizon, the smoke still rises. The count will be formal later. For now, the pattern that once repeated has been broken. Late afternoon, Dobodura airfield. The humidity has not changed. The jungle still breathes the same heavy air it did that morning. But the sound is different now. Engines return one by one. The first B-25 touches down firmly, rolling across the steel runway panels. Then another, then another. 12 aircraft left, 12 return. They taxi into position, engines winding down in uneven rhythm. When the propellers finally stop, the silence feels earned. Mechanics move in immediately, not cheering, not asking questions. They look at the metal. The noses of the aircraft are dark with residue. The forward-mounted machine guns are warm and streaked with powder. Spent casings lie scattered inside the fuselage compartments. Clear the feeds, one mechanic says calmly. Another opens a side panel and whistles softly. The fuselage is marked with fresh holes, clean punctures along the wings, a torn section near one engine cowling. Close, someone mutters. The damaged Mitchell that took hits over the convoy rolls in last. Its right wing shows visible scarring. The crew climbs down slowly, stretching stiff legs. Fuel lines are checked. Bullet holes counted. Control surfaces inspected. No one speaks about victory. They talk about repairs. Inside the maintenance area, armorers remove ammunition belts and wipe down the 8 forward-firing guns. Oil mixes with powder residue. Rags darken quickly. One crew chief runs a hand across the solid metal nose of the aircraft. Still holding, he says, the B-25 is no longer simply a medium bomber. It has crossed into another role. Word spreads quickly beyond New Guinea. Japanese convoy movements begin to change. Ships no longer travel without heavy escort and layered air cover. Routes are reconsidered, timetables adjusted. The cost of moving supplies through the Bismarck Sea has increased. In official briefings, the language becomes more precise. The B-25 Mitchell is now recognized not only as a bomber, but as a low-altitude strike aircraft. A straffer. The transformation is not cosmetic. It is tactical. Back near the hangar, Captain Hall stands quietly beside one of the modified aircraft. The late light reflects softly off its reinforced nose. Just weeks earlier, this machine approached from 3,000 meters, doors opening high above the sea. Now it skims waves. He studies the metal where glass once curved outward. It looks different, a younger crewman says beside him. It is, the Hall replies. There is no dramatic music, no speech about turning points, only understanding. The aircraft did not become stronger because of a new invention. It became effective because someone questioned time. Years later, in a quiet museum hall, one of these B-25s sits beneath soft lighting. Its nose is solid, lined with gun ports. A small plaque explains the Battle of the Bismarck Sea in careful text. Visitors walk past slowly. Some pause to read. Some look at the metal and move on. They see an old aircraft. They do not see the calculations made under canvas roofs, the mechanics working at night, the pilots learning to fly at 10 meters above open water. They do not see the moment when a bomber stopped warning its target. They only see steel. Sometimes war changes not because of a new weapon, but because of a new way to use the one you already have. And if this chapter stayed with you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, tell us in the comments what moments struck you most, and take a look at the earlier videos to see how the story unfolded from the very first mission.